apply. There we are. Okay, so all that remains for me to do is to hand over to Famke and Peter, and we look forward to hearing what you've got to say.
Thank you, Caroline. I hope you can all see this slide that I just put up front now.
Yes.
Yep, we can.
Perfect. Yeah, we're going to, Peter and I did met 1.5 years ago when I made my movement from Fontys University to this University of Applied Sciences in Utrecht, which is more at the center of the Netherlands. And Peter and I came across in one of our meetings. Peter just emailed one of my colleagues of the Knowledge Center, Value-Oriented Professionalization, about I'd like to do something about a more of a value orientation within our Bachelor of Physiotherapy, and how can we collaborate, or in a way can we work together, because I'd like to really see the need to do something with that. And we started to have conversations, more or less, and it became more serious and more serious that we, almost half a year ago, we invited Peter to join our research center and to really try to apply for funding for this kind of development. Peter is an experienced physiotherapist, still working within the university, but as well in practice, but you will probably introduce yourself further on. And I've been an associate professor right now, and the two of us are really put our shoulders together and really making this development and trying to get to move the physiotherapy further into person-centeredness for the student success. The aim of today for this webinar is to discuss together of having just fruitful conversation around the value-oriented character of person-centeredness within in the context of an educational practice, which is the physiotherapy, including the implications for curriculum redesign. So we do have momentum right at this stage that they would like to redevelop the curriculum as well as the organization. And we thought this is perfect momentum as well to see how we can introduce this kind of value-oriented, person-centered practice through using the person-centered curriculum framework that we've been developing with a large group that some of them are here today as well, internationally, within an Erasmus Plus project a couple of years ago. So what you see on the left-hand side represents the physiotherapy practice, and then the right-hand side is a flyer of my research group around value-oriented professionalization. And what really connects us is the person-centered curriculum framework, and we're going to explain that a bit further with you all. How the program is going to look like is Peter will start with an introduction around person-centeredness and the outcome of student success, which is slightly different from healthful cultures, but we will explain that a bit further. Then I do have a shorter introduction around developing the value-oriented educational practice and about funding, getting funding for that. That will last, I think, about 20 minutes or so, and then we will split up into breakout rooms. One breakout room will be hosted by Peter, which is more focusing on a micro level, and he will introduce his question within his presentation, and I'll do the same, and I will go into breakout room 2, which is more has a focus on meso level. And what is holding the two breakout rooms together is that we are looking for key strategies for cultivating a person-centered culture in the Dutch physiotherapy education. After that, we will come together for some kind of a roundup of feedback from the two breakout rooms, and then Caroline will do a wrap-up and a closure for this session. So I hope that's clear to you, and then I'll stop sharing, and the floor is yours, Peter.
Right. I'll pick it up. Yeah, this is thank you very much, Famke. Hello, everybody. Like is being told, my name is Peter Glashouwer, and here you have a starting slide where, funny enough, there are a lot of circular models that show my journey from the past months, but I also have a missing link in the puzzle, so I hope that you're going to help me with that. What I'm will do is that I'll introduce myself, because in order for you to help us, you need to know the field of play, as they say. So let's do a proper introduction. Is that here you can see that I work in a clinic 2 days a week. I work in this setting, as you're seeing, and I'm working as a physiotherapist in an orthopedic environment, and I'm specialized in shoulder, arm, and neck related problems. And the main focus is that it's about chronic pain. I also am a lecturer at the University of Applied Sciences, and that offers me the opportunity to bring those cases to the students and discuss it with them. And there you have the valuable link between education and daily practice. And of course, the role that that Famke already told about is that I'm also part of a research group, the value-oriented professionalization, and that's where the questions from today are mainly coming from. So those 3 areas, and what we my main goal for the long term is about developing value conscious professionals. So that's the question I asked Famke on our first meet. So how can we do this? How can we focus more on value consciousness? Actually, I wanted to make time to philosophize with students without telling them it's philosophy. That's what my main goal was. And this seems to be hard because we're talking about the bachelor curriculum of physiotherapy, and the bachelor curriculum is about, let's say, 17-year-old persons that are coming in, and they leave at let's say 21, 22. So they're young grown-ups, to say, and since not so very long, I also joined kind of a focus group within the learning trajectory of professional identity. So we're really focusing within our bachelor to develop this identity more in a good way. And Famke and I are at the moment at the point where we say that we try to link student success to, let's say, the benefits of being person-centered. So by integrating values into physiotherapy education, we're not only making or training competent professionals, but we also make them more resilient, or we cultivate reflectiveness. That's what we think is the link between success of students, because we have quite a big problem where students drop out of school and they're not going into the profession at all. So why do they drop out? Is there a good reason? Because they find out that physiotherapy is not for them, or is it the wrong way? Is that they fail to connect with something which they value much? And that's what we're focusing on. And person-centeredness is a philosophical perspective that helps me very much. So by we think is that by empathizing, empathy, and mutual respect, being compassionate with students creates the sense of belonging. So person-centeredness becomes the motor for a relation between students and our educational system. And of course, creates a connection with the profession, because that's where it's all about. Let's talk a little bit more about our University of Applied Sciences. So this is our building here at Utrecht. We have in the Netherlands, we have a Bachelor of Science, which takes 4 years, 240 ECTS. We have full-time, part-time programs. We also have master programs. So we have separation of the physical therapy and the innovation of movement care. So they are a little bit different, but you get the bachelor master system with us, and the master is 3 years part-time following your bachelor's program. So you're working and studying there. The part-time program for the bachelor is for people already who have already a job and want to be a physiotherapist. We are, I think, pretty big. So we're aiming for 400 new students in September. We have a total of 1,500 plus, and we have, I think, 156 lecturers who are all contributing to this goal. And well, we have the same thing as all the, I think, Northern Western physiotherapy educational system, like a competency-based educational system. We in Utrecht use the social constructivistic approach to our students. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in the breakout rooms. We have a specific thing that's called workplace learning, and that's with us. It's physiotherapy students start with small workplace learning moments in the first year. Second year, they do 10 weeks of practice program, and the third and fourth year, they do, let's say, 3/4 of a year of practice-based learning. So that's a full part of our educational program. And of course, if you have your diploma, you can work in a physiotherapeutic setting, which is in the Netherlands, we have a lot of private practices, a lot more than in other countries. So the main group goes to the private practice in the Netherlands. These are the topics we're introducing in our first year. So that's not so very interesting, I think, but we talk about community-based movement care, of course. We do a general introduction to health and movement, but this is the field of play where we are going to ask you the questions in the breakout rooms. And maybe before I continue, are there questions in advance about this field of play? Because I'll do a quick focus on the question, is that looking at the past, let's say, months, we talked to Karen Slater with her, which presented last year with introduction of person-centeredness in the curriculum in Denmark, if I'm correct. And but you also have the 7S framework. You have the international literature, which helps you to bring person-centeredness to your educational system. But these are the models, and we are looking for, well, if we do the analogy of if I go to my colleagues and say, well, we're going to do person-centeredness, here is the literature, here are the models, let's start tomorrow, then I'll have a problem probably. And if you all know, or you all already know, that introducing a culture is not something that you do by giving something to someone. So we're especially looking for if you take the analogy of are you give someone a fish to eat, or are you going to teach him how to fish? That's the analogy behind the question: how do we create the capacity to look and reflect and think person-centered? Or are we enabling our colleague lecturers, our colleague teachers to look and think and reflect on person-centered care? So what are the values of my colleagues towards the students we have in our school? How do we talk about person-centeredness towards the care we want in physiotherapy? And there we have the cultural shift. So I can see this really clearly, but I don't have any other words to express this at the moment. But we have the models on the one side, but we also have the values of the educational system, maybe, or the educators on the other hand. So how do we connect these dots? That's that's what we need to find out. I think I'll start. I'll stop here. Any questions on this? Okay. I'll stop sharing here. And I'll give it back to Vanke. Multitasking as well, so.
I just need to go through the slides that you have. I go through this is most easiest way for now. There was more into it, so but that will be coming back as well in the breakout rooms, I think. What I'm going to take you with is, why do Peter and I work together? Because Peter just explained the need for in the physiotherapy, more or less that there's an urgent need from you, but you also observed into your own practice that there is some relational aspect and focus on person-centeredness is missing, not only in the professional code for the physiotherapy, but as well into your own curriculum and stuff. And that really, if I look at where I'm based in the research group value-oriented professionalization, is that this research group focus on professional development with specific attention to the fundamental issues that play a role in their practices. And if you look at views on good work and doing your job well, as well as the development and recognition and practice of values or value orientations in the actions of the professional, it does link with your need to kind of develop, to bring in more philosophy into your curricula, as well as to develop more person-centered practice. And what we saw is that this group of teachers and managers as well weren't so expressive about their values. They didn't really, those values are quite implicit, but what we could see is that they didn't really share that person-centered values as such. Sometimes they were, but there was a very more biomedical instrumental focus on teaching, as well as on caring or treatment in patients, as well as in the way they engage together. And what you can see is that this research group is more or less focusing as well on working with and from different value orientations. So you actually tapped on my shoulder, quite literally, to say, is there something you can help me from this research group in a way how we come to those kind of shared values, because that's something that's very central to the person-centered curriculum framework as well. And do you have any ideas from the work you've been doing over the last 12 years in terms of how you create those shared values and how you can actually live to them in a setting of education? And that matches with our aim of our research center, is about how to enhance critical attention to the value-oriented dimension within professionalization in both educational and work practices, because we think we need that they both need to go together. And I think this is perfect ground actually to work together. The challenge is that what we can see in University of Applied Sciences in UTech, that there are more and more educations that put an adjective in front of their education. So they really have a need for more person-centered education, or even in the nursing and domain of nursing, they talk about personalized nurses. Within the pedagogy, they talk about moving from an ecological to a more ecological. Inclusive education is quite big in the Netherlands as well. A responsive or a more flexible education within the teachers program is quite big. Sustainable education within the technology and IT practices. Democratic kind of education, art-based education. So there's all kind of adjectives that are put in front of the way that they think about good educational practices. And what really triggers me was, do we all know what we mean by them? Because, you know, you can't really be against these. They all have very nice values, which are really, yeah, they all link in some sense as well to person-centeredness, or person-centeredness links to all these in terms of participation, in terms of more humanistic societies and the development of that. But what do we really mean by them, and how do we bring these values, or those values underlying underneath these kind of concepts, actually into practice? And how can others recognize this kind of, I call it, collective identity that you have as a team? But these are normative aspects as well, because you say this is the way we would like to educate future practitioners, and the other way is the wrong way. So to say that, so that's why in Dutch we call this research grammar normative professionalization, but that sounds a bit weird in English, and even in Dutch there's a lot of eyebrows going up if you talk about that. But the whole idea is that you become more explicit about what you think is good practice and what you like to teach future practitioners towards to. And person-centeredness, of course, because of my background, I'm normative in that as well, as I do believe in the values underlying these kind of practices. But at the same time, they do link and do overlap with some of the others. And what I think is our task, or our mission with this research center, is to make people aware of that. It is easy to put an adjective to your educational, but it needs more, and it needs to work around those shared values first, and to really come across a shared understanding as a team in there. But what I was puzzled about was that shared values is really at the heart of those 7S framework. And but the more I became aware and read about this kind of this knowledge center team and where they've been up to, I was just challenging myself, do we really talk about shared values? Is that really a starting point? Or can we rather talk about values being in transition? Because how on earth do you get a team really get all those values that are not only collectively, but as well held by them as a person individually? And of course, you work as a team on a certain task. What is it about that shared vision? How do you create that? Or can we as well work from values in transition? And I just need to move myself out of the screen. If we look at what we are busy with, and what what Peter and I are focusing on is enhancing student success through paying more attention to the person in the future professional and the physiotherapist versus a more instrumental intervention, because there are people that really value as well. They all embrace enhancing students' success, but the way they think that needs to be developed is not always looking at the person, but more on assessments like that, or at other ways of to increase and to enhance student success. So there is a difference in perspectives in the way how we think about how to enhance those students' success. We work with a philosopher, it is a Dutch philosopher, Bista, and he's focusing on qualification and subjectification and socialization in looking at didactics within education. And the qualification, and I add a bit of similar colors to it, has more of an instrumental focus. You need to be an expert, focusing on expert and on what you were just telling Peter around those developing that capacity in certain, so really the knowledge and the skills. The subjectification is more about who someone is as a person, and that a person is not blank when he or she steps into an education or enters an educational program. They bring in as well personal values, ideas, and stuff like that as well. So that links a bit with the person the focus on the person that we have, as well as the socialization. So that's the whole issue of belonging, and in a way of how do people really position themselves through the future physiotherapy, or how it is lived and how it is explained in the Netherlands. So for us, from this knowledge, this research group works more or less around Bista's focus on qualification, subjectification, and socialization. And what this research center as well is that they have quite some experience around value work, as well as on professional identity work. And Peter just explained that beforehand. So where does that identity come in? Because if you talk about person-centered education, then it is about shared values, and it's about some individual values as well. So how do you identify towards those kind of professionals that engage in a certain way with others, whether those are clients or students or even your colleagues? What I looked at as well is that those values, people are holding values individually, but as well as a collective. And what I saw was a bit more lacking over the last couple of years in this research center. It was very much focused on value work on the individual side. But as we all know, when you start working in teams or on a shared mission, then the collective becomes very important as well. So how does that work if your values doesn't really match with those collective or otherwise? And how do you work that through? And I'm talking about teams, but as well as bigger organizations like our institutions or our universities ourselves. So a process that is popping up now and then is that it's a lot about consciousness raising of awareness. It's about articulating, helping people to articulate their values and their beliefs, as well as creating opportunities or enabling dialogue, or what we call in the book courageous conversations, especially when those perspectives or values are not similar or very lying apart, as well as trying to position yourself. So you engage into a dialogue, but it is about positioning yourselves towards some values or some different perspective within your teams and organizations as well. And as well, from there on the positioning, you probably need to act. So you have to make that decision how you'd like to act in certain situation, whether that's more person-centered or more inclusive, or from a different perspective. I'm looking at the time. I need to quickly round off, just to give you a broad overview of what we've been doing. What is our project or research design? We've decided to use a participatory action research design because we don't know exactly where where we'd like to develop to, but we would like to develop a value-oriented bachelor program that increases student success. And how can we do that? And we would like to work with ambassadors of the group, of the teams, as the management and students, that represent specific relevant curriculum aspects, and that forms a kind of an action research group. And the person-centered curriculum framework will be used to guide our actions. We can't say that we really implement, because it's not a framework that's really saying how to implement this kind of and to develop this kind of practice, but we really see that as some guiding framework to guide our actions, and as a means and possibly as an end, but we'll come back to that later on. We start with shared values because we agree with the framework that it is about shared value, or maybe that transition in value, but we need to look at values first, as well as to the strategy, our unique selling points that this bachelor program would like to work towards to, or would like to, being recognized on. And we talked about possible action cycling that are orientated on collective identity work with teachers, as well as the redesigning of the curriculum, as well as organizational change. And I just played around a bit with the different S's, but there is some overlap in the S's, so it feels a bit awkward to put them apart, but just to see that with all those 3 action cycling, we do cover and work with the different S's of the model. And what we hope is that through the integration of these actions on those different cycling, that will result in a better outcome for student success. What we've been trying to do is to apply some funding, of course, because this is not an easy project and we can't always do that from our own hours. So we try to apply it for funding, and we applied for Comenius Leadership Fellow Grant, which is in the Netherlands for 3 years for 500,000 euros. So that's quite an amount of money in which you can really support this kind of development. We did some kind of every organization is only allowed to apply for 1 Comenius Leadership Fellow per year. So they had some kind of internal pre-round to see if we made a chance, but we didn't got it, to be honest. But we would like to share some of our experiences, what we saw, what were our pros and cons in this. One is that student success is high on the organization agenda. I think it's with all of our, especially in the Netherlands, on all our agendas, but it's highly supported. The institutional management of the physiotherapy programs did support the initiative, so we did really have momentum. There was a shared concern about students' well-being among staff, so that was in our favor as well. The other thing was that what I just said, the team had a strong biomedical and instrumental focus and time for collaborative reflection on values. It was not really prioritized. That's what we experienced as well. There's as well some uncertainty about the use of any relational focus, not only person-centered, but to have a different focus on the relation, on the person of the students, or even on themselves as colleagues. There was momentum in the organization as there was an opportunity for, they decided that they wanted to reorganize the whole organization, so the structure and process and the systems. So that for us, that was really momentum to see if we can do to join in this kind of development parallel with the organizational change. But what we got from feedback from the internal pre-review board was that, it's only 1 educational setting and that's too small. So they didn't want to support us because of that. They flattened down the complexity and they recommended to split up the separate cycling. So the processes, they didn't want to have that integration. They looked at Peter as not being a formal leader, and they wanted to have a formal leader to lead this kind of development. They didn't want us to oppose a normative value orientation to the curriculum and the staff. So how, if you say a person-centered curriculum, is that really shared, or is there another opportunity for a different value orientation? What's in it for the student, except for student success, but on the process, what's in it for them? And are you going to test this framework? That was not clear. So there's a lot maybe in our writing as well, but these were some kind of questions they posed us. And what we came to realize is that there is some difference in perspective within the funding agency as well. So even if there is a difference in education among staff in perspective, there's as well in the way how people look at doing research in complex situations. And yeah, we would like to do that in a person-centered way and practice our person-centered values as well. But yeah, it's not really understood. So I come with 2 questions in my breakout room, and that is around what do you think, feel, and imagine when using the person-centered curriculum framework as a means, and it doesn't develop into a person-centered educational practice. So, but otherwise, so we don't want to oppose something, but still there is some kind of skillful manipulation in the terms that we work with action research, we do work with the framework. So there is some kind of movement towards person-centeredness, but what if they don't want to embrace that, but more differently? And how do you think about that? So that's one question. And the other question is in more practical sense, how to increase our chances to get funding for the use of the person-centered curriculum framework in educational redesign, and for people to really get an understanding of the relevance of this kind of work, and that it really requires different kind of research. So this is, yeah, more or less where we're up to in this kind of process. Would you like to add something, Peter, to this before we go out into breakout rooms?
No, just that you really communicate well what my thoughts are, a lot better than when I'm talking in my own head. So thank you for that.
No, don't worry. Yeah. Are there any questions for now, maybe, or some clarification before you can make a decision whether you go with Peter and look more at the micro level in how we can really work with some shared values within the educational setting, and you going to express some idea around learning teams, is that? You're going to work amongst that? And I do have a more question on the meso level in terms of the framework itself and in a way of funding. So those are the 2 options. Are there any questions for now? No? And otherwise you can add them in the chat as well. We can have a look at that later on as well. Oh, Caroline, you do have a question. Oh yeah, you put them in the chat.
No, I
Thank
just
you.
put them in the,
Yeah,
but
very
hopefully
good.
people can see them when we're in the groups.
Yeah. Okay, I'd love to go out into breakout rooms and to see and to continue our conversation in there. And
2 groups for how long, Famke?
maybe for 20 minutes. The presentation took a bit longer, but maybe for 20 minutes, and then come back 5 minutes, feedback 5 minutes, round up.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah.
A bit more. Yeah, we do have 24 minutes then, so that's fine.
So 20 minutes, and I've got 2 groups. Okay.
That's good. Yep.
Off you go and enjoy.
See you. Thank you.
Hi, Diane. Everybody's on their way, winging their way back in their magic carpets. I think that's probably all of us back, actually. I think we've lost a few people during the session.
Yeah, thanks for staying.
Am I handing
Well-
back to Peter or to Famke?
Yeah, well, I can start. We had some. The big thing is that we recognize the question, and also there's a lot of explaining to do about. I think the didactical framework of the learning teams we have. So the idea of students who are how do we call it? Antoinette said it nicely in one short questions. How are students awarded by coming? And there you open up the sphere of what everything that's necessary to create the culture of sharing is in there. So you got the punishment on the one hand, or maybe the grades on the one hand, and the other hand you have the socialization process and the a sense of belonging and wanting to be there, for example. So that creating that is obviously one of the things which needs a lot of attention, because Esther also said I am in this situation, and I'm also doing several things very good, but also struggling with how to take this a step further. So we're really in this together, and Diane had a kind of intuitive swing towards focusing on person-centeredness in itself is the answer. You said something like that, which is also I think very helpful, because that's for me exactly the motivation to do it, but also trying to look for answers. So that was in short, I think, what we discussed.
Yeah, we've been having a dialogue as well about the complexity and the difficulty of really getting others to grasp the whole idea and the need to look at this aspect of education. So looking at values and the way some kind of, we didn't talk about collective identity, but as well, how do you explain in a proper sense the relevancy of looking at values and working from those values, besides kind of other strategies and an instrumental focus that normally is on education. And we talked about, there's a lot of in language and semantics in the way we speak different languages, or using different words to explain it, which people find quite complex and very abstract as well. And we talked about some kind of strategies in working through that is using narratives and storytelling as well around what people see in the practice, because we get a lot of feedback in terms of we already are person-centered, we're doing person-centeredness already, but there are always people that see it differently. And how can you raise that consciousness? And maybe storytelling and narrative could be a way forward, which we are already picking up, Peter and I. Appreciative inquiry as well, as we normally work with people that have a heavy workload, and talking and sharing your values is something where it's puts you in a very vulnerable position as well, because that's something from you. And especially when there are different perspectives, it's quite challenging to bring those in. So the facilitation of those dialogues and conversation is really crucial, especially when you're talking about not in how you're doing and what you're doing, but more on the why. If you're posing why questions, then that requires some strategic facilitation as well. skillful facilitation. But what we all came to the conclusion again, and that was in last webinar as well, is that it all feels a bit dodgy, talking about person-centeredness and talking about value systems, and how can we maybe we need to put it in some simpler language with some examples from our cases, from our practices, in really as a kind of a white paper I'm thinking about, but it's for people to really get a grasp on the importance of really looking at this aspect, which I do see resonance in the research group I'm working with, because we struggle with this as well, because it's less tangible and it's really difficult to grasp. And that would be probably quite helpful for all of us to work through this and really to get an understanding of the relevancy of this work, besides other initiatives that are really helpful in enhancing student success or anything else. So this is more or less what I wrote down, and but it's helpful to see that my challenges or our challenges are not unique, that we all share them, but I think it would be good to move it forward together in how can we break through these challenges as well, step by step, but that would be good. So thank you for sharing all this.
Thank you so much, Peter and Famke, for your presentation and bringing those challenges to our attention, and hopefully people have made some connections and that will help us move forward. They don't feel that new, but they feel quite resistant to us breaking through at the minute. So dialogue is always really important. So thank you so much, and good luck with your next submission for funding. So next time we have got an interesting share, this one, a presentation. Oh, you don't need to see my emails, do you? So the dates is the 10th of June. So we've tried to keep the 10th so that people know that they expect in their diary in March, June, September, November. So we have a presentation from Dr. Eva Soum Aman and Rhoda Moramba, lived experience care in nursing homes. So a slightly different perspective than we've had the last few sessions. So it's a practice theory perspective on diverse staff caring for diverse residents. And then either in September or November, we haven't quite confirmed yet, Professor Maria Mackay from a university in Melbourne is going to talk about culturally safe practice. So remember, if you've got any colleagues who would like to access these webinars, encourage them to join ICoP. Remember our socials as well. That's really important. And another thing that I forgot to mention earlier was I don't think any of you are actually from UK and Ireland, but hopefully if somebody's listening to the recording, but we're looking for 2 new directors from UK and Ireland. So if anybody is interested or speaking to anybody that's interested, then if you get in contact with any of the directors, but Brendan or Tanya maybe in the first instance. So all that remains for me is thank you so much for your time and enjoy the rest of your day and the forthcoming week. And thanks especially to Famke and Peter. Thank you.
Thank you too as well for joining us, and see you soon in the next one.
See you soon, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you,
See you
Caroline.
Bye, thanks.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Famke, Peter, I'll happy to reach out and maybe have another chat if that's helpful as well.
Yeah,
Yes.
that would be really, really helpful, Diane, as well. So yeah, thank you for that.
Send an
Yeah.
email. Okay.